I want to ask you some questions here, and I want you to be honest with yourself about the answers. Do you start the design process by looking at themes? Working in Bootstrap, right? Do you start out by saying, okay, what themes are available to me? If you're designing a website in WordPress, do you say, what themes are available to me, right? A lot of people do that. A lot of people work that way, and I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea. Don't look at themes. Here's the reason. Themes look very nice. You can go to Dribbble right now and see billions of themes that people have created. You can go to any number of third-party sites that sell themes for various content management systems, for application and mobile app frameworks. There's no shortage of visual themes, all right? The problem is, while they look nice, they don't offer any explanations of the what, the how, and the why. These collections don't tell us anything about the problems they were created to solve. They show us what they look like, but there's no understanding that we get of why those colors were used, why that typography was used, why the buttons are that size, why the sliders work the way they do. We don't have any idea how those decisions were made to use those examples and to implement those examples. So we're looking at pretty pictures, but we have no sense of whether what we see is appropriate. And appropriate, my friends, is the magic word. Someone else's UI is someone else's UI. It's not yours. Here's another question. Do you start the design process by looking at the work of other designers? Right? You go to Dribbble or you go to Behance or any of those other places and you look at people's work. Pinterest, right, is full of UI designs. People say, hey, I've redesigned Facebook for the 6,000th time, or I've redesigned Twitter, or I've redesigned Apple's iTunes for the 6 millionth time. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic for a reason. But this is common, and you're not alone. But if you do this, you're making a mistake, okay? Don't look for inspiration. I want you to understand that you will not find the inspiration you're seeking by looking at the work of others. Let that sink in for a minute, okay? Think about what I just said. You will not find inspiration looking at the work of others. The reason you won't find inspiration is because what you will find is someone else's solution to someone else's problem. The problem you have to solve belongs entirely to you, to your client, to your users. What they designed that interface for has nothing to do with your situation. I don't even care if it's the same kind of product. It is still not your situation. It is not the business problems you are there to solve. It is not the user concerns that you are there to address. It's someone else's solution to someone else's problem. I can't hammer that home enough. So instead, I want to give you a piece of ancient eternal wisdom that I firmly believe in, and that is this. Do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise. Seek what they sought. Very wise man by the name of Matsuo Basho said that. It was true in his time, and it is absolutely true in yours. Next, how many of you start the design process by looking at current UI trends? Flat design, anyone? Still hanging around. No, it's got to be flat, or it's got to be, minimalistic, or it's got to be chromeless, or any one of those things. Don't look at trends either. Okay, flat design, for instance, and I pick on flat design a lot. It's a widespread trend. It still gets a lot of air. People are still talking about it. We're still sort of obsessed with everything being flat, which is fine. But the problem here is that designers are adopting the look of flat design without considering whether it's appropriate for the situation or whether people will understand what they see. This idea of less is more has been taken to an extreme. Flat design without visual affordances, the things that tell us how to use something based on cues that we are used to seeing, without those affordances, it's very difficult for us to understand that what we're seeing is interactive. Okay, we see a lot of instances where buttons don't look like buttons. Things that are tappable or clickable or swipeable or whatever the case may be often don't look like they are interactive. They offer no visual cue that says, hey, I do something, right? Swipe me, tap me, click me, whatever it is. That's an affordance. That's incredibly important. And every single day, I see a dozen or more examples of apps, sites, and systems who do a horrible job of communicating interactivity. People can't interact with something if they don't know it exists. All right? And that is the essential difference between design and decoration. A designer thinks very hard about the appropriateness of the visual decisions that he or she makes. And those decisions are informed by research, by investigation, by fact, okay? By doing some legwork to figure out who we're doing this for, what they need out of it, what they will respond to, what they will understand. A decorator, on the other hand, relies on his or her instincts as to what looks good and what doesn't. Most designers who have never learned the timeless principles of design are in this category. They're doing stuff based on instinct. Well, that looks good, feels good. And in some cases, they're able to do that simply because they have natural visual talent. Good designers, quite frankly, are born with visual talent. You have to have that component in order to do this. But it is also equally true that someone who is maybe a poor or mediocre designer can absolutely become a great designer if they pay attention to the things that you see on the left here. Because without that thought, without that underlying motivation, without an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, you're just decorating. So being a designer has everything to do with understanding context of use, which means you understand what people are here to do, you understand why they're here to do it, and consequently, that helps you to understand what visual cues you can create to guide them through that process, to help them through that process, to make it easier or simpler or faster or any number of things, okay? Which of course relates back to good user experience. So design mantra number 2 is this: stop solving other people's problems. Your situation is yours. The context of use you are designing for is yours. Your users, your clients, your product, your workflows, etc., etc., etc. Don't get caught mimicking things that have nothing to do with the problem you're trying to solve.